Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I'm going to talk about the HOA that turned my property into a supposedly HOA property. I should have known better than to leave the old farm alone for almost a year, but life has a way of swallowing good intentions. 10 months ago, my Aunt Beatrice passed and willed me her 36-acre patch of prairie in the hills outside a small town that mostly survives on antique stores and nostalgia. I'd planned to visit right away, but between launching a tiny woodworking business and helping my mom recover from knee surgery, the place kept slipping down my list. My plan was simple: move in after refurbishing the weather-beaten farmhouse, fence the upper pasture for my 2 rescue horses, and maybe plant heirloom corn like Aunt Bee once did for county fair bragging rights. Last Thursday, armed with a thermos of gas station coffee and a flash drive of renovation sketches, I finally made the 3-hour drive. The first red flag flapped when the asphalt dead-ended half a mile early. Where a narrow county lane used to twist toward my front gate, a fresh strip of dusty gray gravel streaked across the grass, straight through my lower field, like a scar that refused to heal. 2 teenagers on roaring ATVs zipped past, rooster-tailing stones. One kid wore what looked like an orange safety vest with reflective letters, HOA volunteer. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding like a loose piston. There is no homeowners association out here, I thought. Aunt Bee's land sat outside the platted subdivision. The closest HOA neighborhood perched a quarter-mile east, across a shallow creek. But the paint on the volunteer's vest didn't care about county plat maps. It declared authority with fluorescent cheerfulness. I eased my truck onto the shoulder, pulled out my phone, and snapped photos of tire ruts carving zigzags where Bee's sunflowers once stood. The second red flag surfaced when a laminated sign appeared to the right of my shattered mailbox. Private trail, residents only, Sage Ridge Community HOA. Beneath it, in smaller print, a line threatened trespassers with towing, fines, and permanent loss of amenity privileges. My aunt's name, or mine, was nowhere. Questions crashed around my head. How had strangers paved a trail across private land without permission? And why would anyone think the actual owner, me, had no right to be here? Pulling up the deed on my phone gave me little comfort. The PDF blinked back innocently, showing my full name, the legal description, and a county clerk stamp dated 11 months earlier. I exhaled through clenched teeth, pocketed my phone, and drove forward, bumping along new gravel that crunched under the tires like fresh ice. Halfway to the farmhouse, a makeshift gate blocked the road. 2 steel poles driven into the dirt, flanked by plastic orange netting, the kind usually seen around potholes. A wooden barricade hung between them with a padlocked chain and yet another HOA logo, this time printed on what must have been someone's desktop printer. An empty folding chair perched beside a cooler of sports drinks, as if an amateur crossing guard had stepped away. I parked, grabbed my deed, and walked the remaining 100 yards. The closer I got, the worse the property looked. The venerable red barn sagged on one side where a corner post had been clipped, probably by some wide-turning ATV trailer. A pile of splintered boards lay scattered like kindling. My throat tightened. The farmhouse door sat wide open, curtains flapping out the front windows. Someone had pried off the decorative brass doorknob I'd always loved as a kid. I stepped onto the porch and shouted, "Hello?" An echo answered from empty rooms. No furniture, no family photos, no kitchen table where Aunt Bee used to shell peas. Just gouged pine floors and an abandoned extension cord. In the front hall, I found the 3rd red flag, well, technically a paper flag, duct taped to a wall stud. Notice to vacate, non-owner occupant. The form listed a complaint number, the very same HOA address from the warning sign, and a signature by someone named Martin, president acting. The date? 2 months ago. I felt a chill even though late spring sun baked the rafters. Whoever Martin was, he believed, or pretended, that I was squatting on my own inheritance, and he'd been confident enough to serve me an eviction notice. I took a slow breath, channeling the calm voice my lawyer friend Serena once taught me. "Document first, rage later," she'd said after helping me fight a shady online seller. I photographed everything: the missing knob, the notice, the battered barn. Then I called the county recorder's office. A polite clerk confirmed the deed remained in my name. No liens, no easements, no nothing. She sounded genuinely puzzled when I described the ATV trail. "That would require a recorded right-of-way," she said, typing audibly, "and we show none." While I talked, an ATV engine revved outside. I stepped onto the porch just as a stocky man wearing wraparound shades coasted up the gravel. He killed his engine, lifted his visor, and frowned like I'd parked on his roses. "Gates for residents only," he barked. I folded my deed printout so my name showed. "I'm Caleb. This is my property. Who are you?" He swung off the ATV, boots crunching stray sunflower stalks. "Martin, president of Sage Ridge Community HOA. And unless you're on the roster, you're trespassing." "You cobbled a road through my field," I said, keeping my voice low, "and emptied my aunt's house." Martin's lip curled just a little. "Improved, not cobbled. The board voted to create an amenity trail system. County said it was unused land." He shrugged. "You weren't around. We posted notices. Not to me, you didn't. No forwarding address on file, abandoned property. States have laws." He tapped his phone screen as if ready to cite statutes. "Look, I'm flexible. If you vacate by Friday, we'll waive the enforcement fee." A hot prickle marched up my spine. "I'm not going anywhere. In fact, this conversation is over until I bring legal counsel." Martin clicked his tongue. "Your call, but the board's within its rights, you'll see." Then he gunned his engine, spraying gravel as he sped off, leaving grit peppering my jeans. I watched him vanish past the barn, mind racing. I'd heard horror stories, HOAs fining folks for mailbox colors, lawn lengths, but annexing land that wasn't in the neighborhood? That felt like the Twilight Zone. I dialed Serena. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me you're calling to invite me to dinner and not another war." I gave her the elevator pitch. Unauthorized trail, eviction notice, empty farmhouse. She whistled. "I need caffeine for this. Give me 20 minutes to fire up Westlaw. But step 1, file a police report for criminal trespass and property damage. Step 2, video everything. Step 3, do not confront anyone alone." "I may have already checked box 3, I admitted. "Well, don't again. Also, call the county sheriff, not city cops. Unincorporated land, right?" "Right." While waiting for deputies, I combed the farmhouse. Every loose item was missing. Copper pipes, antique dresser, even the weather vane Aunt B painted bright blue. Only built-ins remained. In the attic, I found fresh footprints in dust and an empty pizza box stamped with a local chain's logo, evidence of unauthorized sleepovers. Outside, a white SUV rolled up, County Sheriff's Department emblazoned on the side. Deputy Morales listened as I explained, flipping through my printed deed and ID. She walked the property, recorded body cam footage, and shook her head. "I've seen HOAs push boundaries," she said, "but this is a new one." She radioed the station to log a trespass complaint. Then she added, "You might want to call county code enforcement too. That trail construction needed permits." As Morales left, I noticed a fourth red flag, a power pole newly planted at the corner of my west field, supporting a junction box clearly labeled HOA lighting circuit. Someone had wired trail lights, probably splicing into the rural co-op's lines, maybe even onto my meter. My jaw clenched. I documented until sunset, then unfolded an old camp cot in the empty living room. I may have been alone, but stubbornness runs thick in my family. Aunt B once chased off copper thieves with nothing but a garden rake and righteous fury. I wasn't going to abandon her memory to Martin's amenity trail. Just after midnight, headlights swept across the porch. I peeked through the dusty window. 2 ATVs parked at the barricade, engines idling. One rider, tall, ponytail under her helmet, shook the gate, found it locked by them, and cursed. They revved away, voices grumbling about lost shortcut time. Good, I thought. Inconvenience suits them. The next morning, Serena arrived in her dusty Subaru, clutching a thermal mug that could hold a liter of coffee. She had printed copies of the state statutes for adverse possession, trespass, civil theft, and my personal favorite, criminal mischief. We spent 2 hours outlining steps, emergency injunction, demand letter, quiet title action if necessary. She grinned like a chess player spotting mate in 3. By late afternoon, we drove to the Sage Ridge Clubhouse, a faux colonial building with white columns that overpromised luxury. A posted schedule listed an emergency board meeting, so we signed in as guests. The moment Martin saw me, he stiffened, but Serena slid a glossy folder across the table before he could speak. "Notice of intent to sue," she said, voice calm but slicing. "Count 1, trespass. Count 2, conversion of personal property. Count 3, civil conspiracy. Your next move determines whether punitive damages get added." Gasps fluttered among board members. Martin's face blanched. "You can't—" "Actually," Serena said, "we can. And we will file for a temporary restraining order by 10 a.m. tomorrow unless you start remediation tonight." An older board member named Paula leaned forward. "How much remediation?" "Return all removed property, restore land to prior condition, cease using the trail, and provide written apologies." Serena recited. Paula turned to Martin. "You told us Caleb had abandoned it." Martin's jaw twitched. "That's what the assessor's clerk implied." I shook my head. "The clerk verified my ownership yesterday." Voices overlapped. The meeting devolved into finger-pointing. Finally, Paula banged a plastic gavel. "We need counsel," she said, glaring at Martin. "Adjourned." Outside, Serena exhaled. "They'll stall, so we file tonight." She glanced up the ridge where string lights glowed along the ATV trail. "But first, code enforcement." We drove to the county building. The inspector on duty recognized photos of the unpermitted power pole instantly. "You say they tapped co-op power without authorization?" he asked. "That's a safety hazard. We'll dispatch an emergency crew to cut service tonight." Progress tasted sweet. Still, there was the issue of my missing belongings. I suspected they'd been hauled to a neighborhood storage shed. Serena agreed we needed proof, so we planned a polite request to search after deputies secured a warrant. As twilight cooled the air, I stood by the barricade with a note in hand. "Property closed pending investigation. No entry without owner's permission." I zip-tied it to the gate, then added a new padlock. If Martin wanted a fight, the rules had changed, this time literally by the book. Lights flickered along the gravel as county electricians arrived to disconnect the unauthorized circuit. One worker muttered, "Someone's going to get a hefty bill." Exactly the kind of punishment Aunt B would have liked. Practical, undeniable, and hitting the wallet where it hurts most. I turned toward the sleeping farmhouse, still empty but no longer abandoned. Under the porch light, a box rested I hadn't noticed earlier. An anonymous delivery wrapped in plain paper. Inside lay the brass doorknob, polished clean with a sticky note. "This belongs to you. Sorry, no signature." A small victory, perhaps the first of many. I walked inside, reinstalled the knob with a screwdriver from my glove box, and felt the latch click into place like a promise. I woke up at first light to a sound my aunt used to call the gossip of the meadow. Doves and cicadas trading secrets in the cottonwoods. For a second, I almost forgot about the trail and the empty rooms. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Serena. "Filed the injunction electronically at 2:18 a.m. Judge will look at it after docket call." I brought donuts. On my way. I boiled camp stove coffee on the porch and watched a utility truck roll past the barricade. Two linemen climbed the new pole and clipped the line that powered the pretty string lights. The bulbs winked out one by one, a reverse sunrise. One lineman tipped his hard hat. "Morning. Co-op will forward the unauthorized usage bill to whatever account pulled the permit. If any permit exists," he chuckled. "Folks get creative till the invoice shows 6 digits." By the time Serena arrived, the courthouse clerk had stamped a hearing time for the following Monday. That gave us 4 days to gather proof. We piled in her Subaru and drove the perimeter. I'd noticed tire tracks leading to a corrugated shed that technically sat on HOA land, but practically straddled the property line. The padlock was new. The hinges, not so much. Serena frowned. "We can't break it without a warrant." "Could request an exigent search if stolen property's inside," I said. She glanced at me. "Since when did you learn criminal procedure?" "Watched every season of that courtroom docuseries while varnishing countertops." She laughed, then sobered. "Let's flag it in our affidavit." Meanwhile, more photos. We were kneeling to measure ruts when an old green pickup sputtered up the trail. The driver cut the engine and stepped out. A wiry woman in denim overalls and a battered straw hat. "You Caleb?" she asked, accent riding the edge of north and south. "I am." "Name's Jess. I board 2 rescue mares on the lot south of yours. Been watching those ATV yahoos tear up the valley. Someone said the rightful owner was back, so I baked muffins." She held out a basket still warm. We accepted gratefully. Over blueberry crumbs, she told us kids from the subdivision used the trail as a shortcut to a motocross spot by the creek. Last week, a 14-year-old flipped a quad and busted his collarbone. Ambulance had a hard time finding him because the path's not on maps. Parents are spitting nails. She tilted her head. "Might testify if asked." Serena's eyes lit. "Would they provide an incident report?" "Already public record. County EMS will email it." As Jess spoke, I noticed a fresh line of boot prints around the shed door. Someone had visited after the power was cut. We thanked Jess and drove to the sheriff's substation. Deputy Morales met us with a grin. "Judge already called," she said. "He's curious why an HOA thinks eminent domain comes free with a social committee badge." We filled her in on the shed. She typed a quick probable cause statement, got a warrant within the hour, and drove back with 2 patrol units. When the padlock came off, the door swung wide to reveal my missing furniture. Aunt B's churn and, incongruously, 6 bags of community event plastic cups stamped Sage Ridge Summer Luau 2025. Everything was tagged into evidence. I salvaged B's hand-painted hope chest, now scratched but intact. Morales found a stack of unopened certified letters addressed to unknown occupant, Rural Route 12, all stamped Return to Sender. She raised an eyebrow. Looks like Martin tried to fake notice by mailing letters he knew would bounce. That's textbook bad faith. Back at the farmhouse, Jess arrived with a neighbor named Emmett, a retired surveyor who brought a tripod and bright pink flags. HOA claims their plat includes your south pasture, he said. But I pulled the original township survey from '53. Corners haven't moved. He cited bearings, hammered stakes, and proved the trail sat a full 72 feet inside my boundary. Serena snapped photos of every flag against a GPS overlay. That evening, a homeowner named Dana knocked on my door. She looked apologetic, holding a casserole like a peace treaty. "I thought you were some absentee investor," she said. "Martin told us the county seized the farm for back taxes. Now I learn he's been using our dues to grade trails on private property. Some of us want him recalled." I invited her in and we talked over noodles and cheese. She revealed the board's secret. Martin owned a landscaping company that billed the HOA for amenity improvements. He'd pushed the trail project through with minimal votes by scheduling meetings at odd hours. The grading invoice alone topped 25 grand. Dana copied the ledger to a thumb drive and slipped it across the table. Night settled. I sat on the porch listening to crickets and distant thunder. The brass knob gleamed in porch-light glow, a small circle of normalcy. For the first time since arriving, I felt the momentum shifting. The next morning, 2 things happened almost at once. First, Morales called to say a pawn shop 2 towns away reported someone trying to sell my aunt's antique weather vane. They'd flagged it after seeing the county bulletin. Second, I received an email from the HOA's law firm, a 3-paragraph cease and desist accusing me of defamation and unlawful occupation. Serena read it, snorted, and drafted a scathing reply citing the newly executed warrant and chain of evidence. Around noon, a utility van bearing the cable company logo eased down the drive. The technician stepped out with a clipboard. "Work order to install Wi-Fi in community rec shack," he said, pointing to my barn. Serena flashed her bar card. "Cancel the order. Property dispute pending litigation." He shrugged and left, but not before handing me the top sheet. A signed authorization by Martin, listing the service address as Trail Pavilion, Lot 19. My barn was now a pavilion in his mind. We spent the afternoon packing exhibit folders, EMS accident reports, survey maps, HOA invoices, pawn shop affidavits. Jess and Emmett stopped by with lemonade and muscle to drag the salvaged furniture back inside. Dana returned, whispering that she'd gathered 26 signatures, enough to force a special election to remove Martin as president. At dusk, as cicadas warmed up, a black SUV idled outside the gate. 2 men in polo shirts stepped out, one carrying a DSLR with a huge lens. "We're here to document the trail for promotional materials," the camera guy said. "For the HOA?" I asked. "No, for Horizon Development. They're negotiating with the board to acquire the farm once the title clears. Luxury cabins. Want a quote for our brochure?" Serena nearly laughed. "Title's not clearing anywhere except back to Caleb." She handed them the injunction notice copy. They left, camera unused. That night, lightning seeped over the horizon, turning the sky bruise purple. Storm winds rattled loose tin on the barn. I couldn't sleep, so I walked the property line with a flashlight. Halfway up the ridge, I found 3 teenagers pushing an ATV stuck in mud. They froze when my beam hit them. The smallest kid blurted, "Martin gave us permission." "Permission from a non-owner isn't permission," I said evenly. The kid's foot was swelling. He twisted his ankle. I radioed EMS. While we waited, I asked how often they rode. "Every day after school," he said. "It's the shortcut to the creek jumps." I nodded, thinking of future deposition testimony. EMS arrived, loaded the injured rider, and thanked me for the coordinates. On the way out, one paramedic muttered, "This is the 3rd call here in 2 weeks." Morning of the hearing dawned clear and humid. We walked into the courtroom carrying 3 binders and righteous indignation. Martin sat at the respondent's table flanked by a lawyer whose suit pocket bulged with sticky notes like neon feathers. As proceedings began, our judge, a middle-aged woman with weary patience, listened without expression. Serena opened by establishing ownership, deed, assessor confirmation, sheriff affidavit. Then she played deputy body cam footage showing the inside of the shed packed with my belongings. Exhibit C. Survey markers proving encroachment. Exhibit D, the electrical hazard photos. Exhibit E, HOA invoices funneled to Martin's company. Exhibit F, Horizon Development's marketing email quoting Martin's promise of unencumbered amenity rights. Martin's attorney tried the abandoned property defense. Serena countered with State Statute Section 1945-108, subsection B, 1. Abandonment requires clear intent to relinquish an unoccupied property does not equal neglected if taxes paid. I had bank statements proving annual taxes auto-drafted. Judge Caldwell looked over her glasses. Mr. Martin, did you obtain consent to grade a trail on the petitioner's land? Martin's mouth opened. His lawyer objected. Caldwell overruled. Martin stammered about community benefit and implied license. Serena slid forward the cease and desist letter he'd sent. Proof he didn't think I had any license at all. Judge Caldwell nodded slowly. She granted the temporary restraining order ordering the HOA to cease use of the trail, remove the barricade, and return possessions within 72 hours under sheriff supervision. She set a follow-up hearing on damages and hinted she was not opposed to punitive consideration. As we left, Martin's phone buzzed. Dana texted me that the board recall vote was scheduled for that evening. When we reached the farmhouse gate, volunteer crews from the HOA maintenance committee were already cutting the plastic fencing under Morales's watchful eye. Jess's truck idled nearby, towing fence posts she'd donated. The teenagers from the night before helped shovel gravel off the topsoil, chastened and eager to avoid further trouble. But the saga wasn't done. 2 days later, Dana reported that Horizon Development had backed out and was demanding a refund of its consulting retainer. The HOA treasury was nearly empty, thanks to Martin's landscaping invoices. So the board levied a special assessment on homeowners. That, in turn, triggered fury. Residents marched to Martin's driveway with posters reading, "Our dues, your scam." He tried to call the sheriff on them. Morales advised him to address it in civil court. Meanwhile, Serena and I calculated a restoration budget. Reseeding prairie grass, regrading ruts, replacing barn siding, plumbing, repairing porch boards. Estimate, $48 grand and change. She filed it as an itemized demand ahead of the damages hearing. We also added a conversion count for the weather vane, hope chest, and copper piping stolen. Morales arrested 2 HOA maintenance workers found on pawn shop security footage. They confessed Martin told them, "Take her trash, owner won't mind." On Saturday, Jess invited me to the local farmers market. As we wandered past jars of peach jam, people recognized my name from the county paper's front page. HOA sued for land grab. Strangers offered sympathy, and one elderly man pressed a business card into my hand. "Name's Harold," he said. "I chair the County Historical Society. Your farmstead dates to 1890. We've grant money to preserve heritage barns. Could cover part of your repair costs." A subplot I hadn't seen coming, delivering help and a sweet slice of poetic justice. Martin's destructive project would now result in a historic site plaque none of his ATVs could touch. That evening, Serena and I packed legal boxes when Dana called, barely containing glee. Recall succeeded. 84% demanded Martin resign. Interim President Paula asked if you'd attend a meeting tomorrow to finalize a settlement. Serena arched an eyebrow. Their panic is our leverage. We arrived at the clubhouse the next day. Gone were the trail posters. In their place, sheets of ledgers and apology drafts littered the table. Paula cleared her throat. "We're prepared to sign a confession of judgment for the full restoration estimate, plus legal fees, plus an additional 25% for inconvenience, provided you forego punitive damages." Serena leaned back. "We'd still pursue a public apology letter mailed to every county parcel, and Martin personally signs it." Paula nodded. "He already agreed as part of the resignation." By sundown, we had a signed agreement and a cashier's check for an initial installment. I walked outside, feeling like my boots barely touched gravel. Jess waited by her truck. She smiled, then handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a packet of heirloom corn seeds. "Plant these next spring," she said. "Let the prairie know it's loved again." The morning after the settlement felt like waking from a long dive. I brewed coffee, dark as tar, and walked the boundary fence. Pink survey flags still dotted the soil. Proof the land was mine again. No ATVs snarled. The gravel scar waited for erasure. By 8, Serena texted. The cashier's check had cleared, so restoration began. Jess and Emmett arrived on a borrowed tractor. "Time to unscar your pasture," Jess said. We ripped the gravel strip and dumped it into an eroded creek bank. Emmett steered with a laser level while I shoveled until blisters rose, happy to trade pain for progress. During a break, Emmett handed me an 1890 survey plat on onion skin paper. It showed the barn and no public easement, perfect for the historic site bid. My pulse pounded. This land predated cars, let alone HOA shortcuts. That afternoon, Harold from the Historical Society and a historian named Lila crawled through the loft, admiring hand-hewn beams. Lila traced a chiseled XII, Roman numeral assembly marks, she whispered, promising to fast-track grants. Meanwhile, Martin's kingdom collapsed. An audit exposed fake invoices and a consulting wire to Horizon Development. Neighbors boxed his office stuff and left it on his porch. Someone texted me a photo. I saved it like a trophy. Jess boarded Aunt Bee's rescue horses for free. Watching Maple and Cricket canter unclenched a knot I hadn't known I carried. Animals were back where machines once ruled. Serena and I built the damages case, listing every sin, illegal grading, stolen furniture, power theft, until the timeline looked like telephone poles marching toward judgment. She titled the binder, Chain of Bad Decisions. Friday, Deputy Morales unlocked the HOA shed so we could reclaim Bee's things. In a dusty box, I found her journal. The last line read, Caleb will set it right. Eyes stinging, I slipped it into my pack. Saturday, Richard, the dad of the teen who'd broken his collarbone on the trail, brought beef stew and an apology. Martin said your land was abandoned. We believed him. Warm stew, warmer repentance. Sunday rain fell, perfect for the prairie grass seed Jess had scattered. Rivulets carried the last bits of gravel away, washing out the scar. By Monday's hearing, Martin looked hollow. His lawyer blamed the board. Serena produced proof of his personal fraud. Judge Novak tripled the landscaping bill, $75,000, payable in 90 days, then sent the file to the DA. The chastened HOA volunteered labor for barn repairs. Over 4 weekends, neighbors hammered, wired lights with permits, and painted siding. Even Richard's son, arm in a sling, sanded window frames. Mid-August delivered 2 envelopes, a $34,000 preservation grant, and a USDA prairie restoration contract. The ground Martin tried to pave was now federally protected. Governance reform, too. With Jess as vice president, bylaws now demand a 2/3 vote plus a title search before touching land beyond HOA borders. September's county fair saw Maple and Cricket win blue ribbons, while I told the saga of the land grab at the Historical Society booth. Half my helpers wore Sage Ridge cleanup crew shirts. Early October, the final restitution check arrived. I celebrated by pre-buying heirloom corn seed. Some promises you pay forward. At our thank you barbecue, Serena handed out gag certificates, including lifetime ban on bad faith to Martin in absentia. Dusk brought flyers for a harvest ride, horseback, not ATVs, raising scholarship money in Aunt Bee's name. Maple stamped approval. Winter settled quiet. I restored Bee's pie safe and crocheted a blanket Jess taught me. New Year's sunrise flashed off the barn's new metal roof. Unbroken snow lay where engines once roared. Silence wasn't empty, it was earned. In February, Martin pled guilty to felony property theft and misdemeanors for power and permit fraud, escaping jail but owing more restitution and roadside trash duty, specifically not on my land. Spring frogs sang while Emmett tilled the upper pasture. I planted the heirloom kernels row by row. By May, stalks stood waist-high. A bronze plaque arrived, Brown Prairie Farmstead, 1890 to 2025 protected. We bolted it by the gate. Early summer, the reformed board unveiled transparent budgets in a playground where Martin once pictured cabins. Children shrieked while parents sipped lemonade. A little girl tugged my sleeve. "Did you save the farm from the bad guys?" I knelt. Lots of us did, especially neighbors who learned better. Late July's first sweet ears roasted over a bonfire. Fireflies floated like forgiving lanterns, and the only smell was caramelized corn, not gasoline. When guests left, I lingered under a sky jeweled with stars. Crickets resumed their meadow gossip, this time about reclamation. I whispered, "Never 10 months away again," locked the restored brass knob, and fell asleep knowing victory mattered. But continuity mattered more, and it was finally secure. Friends, thank you. See you soon.